What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Mohawk Motors. My name is Jason. So I got some stuff for the Assblazer. I want to get it installed. I really like the way it looks, but the wheels don't quite fill the wheel wells as well as I would like. So I got a lowering kit. So we're gonna get it in the garage, get this kit unpacked, and figure out how to get it installed. Good morning, sweetheart. I never installed a lowering kit before, so this will be a new adventure for me. Let's get this job done. So before I start, I want to get a measurement of where it sits at ride height now, and then I'll measure after the kit is installed, and that should give me an idea of approximately how much. I think this is about a 2-inch lowering kit, but we're gonna find out. So at the rear, right over the center of the wheel, well, that's easy to remember, 34 inches to the bottom of the wheel well. And at the front, center of the wheel, right over the center, 32 and a half. So 34 in the rear, 32 and a half in the front. I'm gonna write that down, and then I'll show you what I got. So the lowering kit, it's a Belltech lowering kit. It comes with new shocks and springs for the rear, as well as new bump stops. And it also comes with new struts for in the front. You reuse the stock springs in the front. You just put them onto these new struts. Since I'm going to be in there, I'm going to be replacing the lower ball joints. I already did the uppers to get it through inspection, but I'm going to put new lower ball joints on it while I have it apart. And I also ordered a control arm and adjustable track bar for the rear. The rear suspension in these Trailblazers and Envoys and Trail Ascenders, or Ascenders, is a link suspension with a track bar. If you lower it without changing the track bar, your rear end is going to be out of center in the back. The track bar's job, it acts as a pivot, and as you change where that vehicle is sitting at ride height, the track bar travels through its arc of travel and will push the rear out of center. So an adjustable track bar, like I have here, will allow me to keep the rear end centered in the vehicle after I lower it down. All right, the instructions recommend starting in the front. Same pretty straightforward installation here. Jack the vehicle up, support it with jack stands, remove the wheels, remove the strut retaining bolts at the top of the strut that go through the frame bracket, remove the nut at the bottom of the strut on the lower control arm, and then it should come out. You don't really need to take a lot apart to get the struts out of these things, which is nice. Okay, wheels and tires are off. It's on the jack and the jack stands, so no worries that it's going to fall or anything like that. Get the struts out. It's very simple on these. I actually really appreciate how simple it is to get the struts off of these things. Up in the engine compartment, you've got 2 bolts at the top of the strut. One right here, one right here. They're just an 18mm nut. They're welded to the strut, so you zip those off with an impact. Same thing over on the passenger side, just the 2 18mm nuts. You can zip them off, you can access them with an impact. And then down below, the strut comes down, has this little curved piece of forged steel, and then you've got a 24mm nut here. You run that nut off, and that releases the strut. Now, this bolt is a tapered bolt, so the strut will more than likely be kind of stuck on there. To get it released from that tapered fit, just hit the forged piece of steel with a hammer a few times. and the vibration will jar it loose from that tapered fit, and it should come out. So let's get it apart. All right, I've got my first strut off. This just happens to be the passenger side, but the operation will be the same on both sides. Now, I need to get the forged steel piece off of here. That's just an 18mm bolt. And then it allows it to expand right here and slide off the bottom of the strut. Depending on yours, I've had them before, you need to drive like a chisel just barely into the gap to expand it a little bit more to get it apart. We'll see how this goes. But before I start on that, what I want to show you is this is the new lift/lowering strut that comes in the Belltech kit. So I'll disassemble this, get it all assembled. The way this kit adjusts the ride height is with these steel rings here that are sliding on the shop side. You take your little coil base, slides over. You have to remove the black cap here. But it slides over, and these rings adjust how much higher or lower than stock it is. The maximum lowering effect is 2 inches, and you achieve that by putting none of these rings back on the shock. So it'll just be the coil base riding on the edge here, welded to the shock to achieve that 2 inches of lowering. So, I guess let's just get this done. I don't need these rings. I do need this. And you see it's going to sit all the way down on there. I have a couple coil spring compressors. I've had these things for so long. I think I bought them in high school, and I think I've used them like 2 or 3 times since I got them. But I mean, they're simple and they'll do the trick. So please, please, please be careful if you're ever doing this yourself. There's a lot of force stored up in this spring, and if one of these things get away from you, I mean, it can kill you. So please be careful. Picture it like a loaded gun. You never want to be at the end of the barrel in either direction. Now these are really meant for like a coil spring, not a strut. A strut compressor is much larger and more rugged, but I don't have one. Alright, so there's enough tension. The coil is compressed far enough that I can freely wiggle the shock, so I know the tension is released from the strut itself. Now I can get this bolt off, the retaining nut at the top. Hopefully it cooperates. It did not. Wow, it didn't even move. Bump stop for the front is here on the strut, this little foam guy. Now the strut installation instructions say to cut this bump stop right in this groove. So we're going to cut that off there. There we go. New strut. So decide, do I want this black piece back on there? Do I not want it? Part of me does, part of me doesn't. Let's see if it cleans up.
Later.
Now, before I tighten this bolt back up, I'm going to get it on the vehicle because this needs to index correctly with the control arm, and the two bolts need to index correctly with the body. And I think we're pretty close, but we're not perfect. All right, we've got the passenger side all back together. Bolt tight at the bottom, bolts tight at the top, everything where it's supposed to be. Very happy with that. So now we just repeat the same process on the other side. Well, team, that one fought me a little bit, but we got it done. Had to cut off the tip of the bolt and then use the vice grips on the shank. Now, fortunately, I don't need that old shock anymore. If you're going to be trying to reuse it, that would have been a way bigger headache. But because I was replacing it, not a big deal. You can destroy stuff that you're not going to reuse, and that makes it easy to get stuff apart. But it's all together, all tucked back in nice and tidy on this side. Now, I know I said I was going to change the lower ball joints while I was in here. These lower ball joints look pretty new still. I think maybe somebody beat me to it before I bought it. So I'm going to leave those lower ball joints alone. And that means we're pretty much done in the front. I'm going to slam the wheels back on it and then lower the front down to the ground, and we'll get to work on the rear. Okay, I've got the rear end jacked up now, supported on jack stands. I'm going to use the jack itself to raise and lower the axle because I need to get the coil springs out. Now, because I also have the control arms for it, my plan here is get the new coil springs and shocks on, and then one at a time replace the control arms and the track bar. I feel like that's going to make the axle move around on me the least, so it should be easier to get everything lined back up that way. Now, the Belltech Lowering Kit comes with new shock absorbers, new coil springs, and new bump stops. And thank goodness for the new bump stops, because this one is pretty much smoked from the looks of it. So we'll get that stuff put on, and then we'll start doing the control arms. It went a lot easier than I expected it to. Got the stock shocks and stock springs removed. I also pulled off the stock track bar. So now I'll just put all the new stuff back on. New bump stops, new springs, new shocks, new track bar. Okay. I've got all the lowering kit pieces in. The new shocks, the new springs, and the new bump stops. I also put the new track bar on, the new adjustable track bar. I have it at a preliminary guess. I'm really not going to get it fully adjusted until it's on the ground. So I haven't tightened anything down yet. I'm going to start getting the control arms swapped out. And once I have all the control arms switched out, then I'll go through and start getting everything tightened. Woo-hoo-hoo! All right. I've got all my new link arms installed and tightened down, so they should be good to go. At this point, I don't need to mess with any of the angles or anything. I'm just keeping it more or less stock, but with upgraded parts. So the next thing I need to do is I'm gonna use the jack under the differential, pump it up until it's holding the weight of the vehicle. I'm gonna leave my jack stands under the frame, but they won't be touching the frame. That's, you know, insurance. Because I need to get the track bar adjusted with the weight of the vehicle on the rear axle. All right, everybody, so I've got jack stands under the rear axle, and the weight of the vehicle is being held up by the jack stands and the front wheels, obviously. So the way this works is I have my string set up here. I have it taped onto the fender in the same place on both sides. What that does is gives me a plane straight down from that fender that will be even, right? Now I take my tape measure, I'm going right against the wheel mounting surface and measuring where my string is. And on this side, the string is hanging down right at 4.5 inches. Now over on the other side, you can see I've got the same setup. Flat against the wheel mounting surface. And on this side, it's right at 4.25 inches. So what that tells me is I need to go underneath on my adjustable track bar, and I need to make it just a tiny bit longer. I literally need to split my difference, right? So I have a 1/4 inch difference from passenger side to driver side. So I really only need to move the axle 1/8 of an inch, 1/2 of a 1/4. And that should put it right in the center. Okay, so I made my adjustment. Now this side is at 4 3/8. Which means the other side should be 4 3/8 also. Yep, if it stays still, 4 3/8 right on the money. Which that's great. That's probably better centered than it was from the factory. So I am happy with that. I'm gonna get underneath, get all the links tightened, get all the jam nuts on the links all tightened up. I'm gonna tighten my shock absorber bolts because they're in rubber bushings, so they need to be tightened at ride height as well. Double check and make sure I didn't forget anything else, and then put the wheels back on it, get it on the ground, and get it out of the garage. All right, it's back on the ground. It's on its own weight. I moved it forward and backward a little bit. It's hard to get a judge in the garage because there's not a ton of space, but it definitely looks lower to the ground to me. So that's a success. Let's take our measurements at the wheel wells and see how much lower it actually is. 30.5 inches. 30.5 in the front. We had 32.5 before. So exactly a 2-inch drop. Let's see where we're at in the rear. So at the rear, I'm measuring 30.25. Before, we were at 34. So we got about 3 3/4 of a drop in the rear. I actually like that because it had a slight bit of forward rake before, and I prefer it to sit level. Now, I'm sure as I drive it a little bit, the suspension will settle just a little bit. But seeing here, I'm pretty happy with it. Let's get it outside and take a look and see what we think. Looks pretty darn good. I like the stance. I really like that it's level now. I really like that. I love that sound. Love that sound. So everybody, I've put a few miles on it now, and it feels a little bit better planted, a little more stable on the road, especially coming through turns. There's noticeably less body roll and sway. I haven't noticed or heard any more noise inside from the solid bushings in the back, so those don't seem to have made a difference as far as noise. I do think they'll offer a little more rigidity later when we do some real power upgrades to this thing. But for now, it was really, I just wanted that adjustable track bar to make sure I could get the rear end centered in the truck again. So I'm pretty pumped. I like this thing. I'm gonna have to get used to driving something with little ground clearance like this does. I'm gonna call it a success. Belltech Lowering Kit and massive speed rear control arms and adjustable track bar installed. Another upgrade complete on this thing. Very happy with it. Coming along nicely, I would say. One thing I will have to do is take it to get a front end alignment. Now it's still driving nice and straight, tracking well down the road, but I know I've altered the angles on the front wheels now, especially the camber. So I want to take it and get a front end alignment done just to make sure that I'm not wearing my tires odd or goofy or anything like that. Well, everybody, that's it for this video. I'm really happy with the Belltech Lowering Kit and the Massive Speed Systems rear control arm kit. I think they're going to be valuable updates or upgrades, especially as we start to put more power into this thing. And we're probably going to get to that soon. I'm not sure when. I don't think that 4L60 in this thing has that much longer to live. I want to try to get it through summertime, and then this winter we'll pull the engine and trans out together and we'll do some substantial updates and upgrades to this thing. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you like seeing the evolution of this project. I'm still really excited about this thing. I think it's cool. And until the next video, take care.